Ho, 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 and season's greetings. It's Tim Ferriss, and the author of the 4 Hour Work Week, 4 Hour Body, 4 Hour This, That, and the Other Thing, and Tools of Titans. Tools of Titans. All grown up. I moved from Timothy to Tim, and I got rid of the 4 hour moniker. Retiring the jersey for now. So this is for everybody out there. Intelligent change folks, 5-minute journal folks. I'm going to answer some questions about how I use the journal and much more. And this crazy light on my face. I don't know why this is so extremely excessive with the light, but that's okay. This is my ATR 2100 from Audio Technica. This is my go-to travel mic for everything, including the podcast. All right, here we go. So a couple of things. 5-minute journal. What do I do when it feels repetitive? I ban certain answers, meaning if it's just the health of my family, then you're not allowed to use that for the next 2 weeks. You have to come up with novel answers. So it generally doesn't feel repetitive to me. Number one, what do I do when I forget? I forgive myself and I pick up when I remember. I don't hold a grudge against my flawed memory because we all have flawed memory. Where do I keep it? Typically in my backpack or on my table, so I can see it right directly ahead of me at 12 o'clock on the table where I will see it regularly. Alrighty. Patterns I've noticed between people who've adopted the habit versus people who haven't. Well, hard to say because the sample size I know is my audience. I will say that some of my close friends have simply contacted me via text saying that it has changed their lives, and my close friends who are already high performers are not prone to saying that lightly. And then this is from UJ. I know you're a big fan of setting aside a block of 2 to 3 hours to get your most important task of the day done. How often do you adhere to this schedule? How many days a week do you aim to get your MIT done? What days do you usually take off? I aim every day to get my MIT done, most important task. So that's generally Monday to Friday. And then Saturday, Sunday, I will CTFO, chill the F out. All right. Moving down. Questions from some of you guys who I think are probably listening to this. Jenny O'Connor asks, any tip for Titan couples? Have any of the Titans you've interviewed embarked on a creative or business endeavor in collaboration with a romantic partner with success and longevity? How do they make it work? Yes, you should check out a few folks. I would say specifically Laird Hamilton and Gabby Reese, and then also Astro Teller and his wife Danielle Teller. So those are 2 examples. And I think routine to keep romance alive, that could be as simple as the same cocktail that you have together, say, to close out the workday each day, which is something that Danielle and Astro Teller do, or working out together. In the case of Laird and Gabby Reese, these are, I should point out, scheduled. It is not when you feel like it. It is when it is on your calendar and blocked out. And they also, I would say, are good at preserving some degree of polarity and how should I put it? Job division, if that makes any sense. So I think in a heteronormative couple, actually that's bullshit. Even in the homosexual couples that I know, you need some polarity between what we would consider masculine and feminine roles or characteristics. And the couples I've seen succeed long term, particularly if they're constantly in contact because they work together, that is a very, very critical piece. I think the Way of the Superior Man is a book worth reading related to that. Scott Burgess asks, do you knowingly use the placebo effect in your life, i.e. doing something that you know is scientifically unproven or false, or a superstition that seems to bring a benefit to you? I wouldn't say so. I've try not to fool myself whenever possible, and I've read a lot to go about doing that. Whether it's Bad Science by Ben Goldacre, which I encourage everyone to read, or for instance Eric Vance, who I had on the podcast to talk specifically about placebo. There are some superstitions, though, as someone who's hyper logical, some superstitions that I like to keep near and dear. I don't like doing a cheers with water at all. I don't like using red ink to sign contracts. That's from Asia. And there are a handful of things like that, but those are 2 that come to mind. I also like the time 5:55 AM, but particularly PM, because that's the minute I finished my final edit of the last line of the 4 Hour Body. So it became a thing. All right, next is Tim. This email would make me think that's not your real name, but that's okay. And here's a question. When you see loved ones, friends, or family making poor choices, addiction, not choosing good friends, blah, 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 lacking ambition, how do you persuade them to choose differently? And more importantly, how do you let go or move on when they continue to make these choices? Well, if they're really close, making poor decisions, I really try to have a heart-to-heart where the focus is how much I care about them and how much I want them around longer and in good shape. So I make it not about them. It's not a blaming game. It's not pointing fingers. It's empathizing and trying to focus on how important they are to me. And then offering something that you'd like to try as a test. This is how I propose it. As a test, how about I pay for 2 months of X, Y, and Z, and we just try it out. I know it's silly, but it would mean a lot to me, and obviously you don't have to do any of it, but it would really, really mean a lot to me. And I've tried to build up the courage for a long time to even have this conversation. So what do you think? That type of approach, how do you let go or move on when they continue to make their choices? I think that Stoicism can help there, and the Serenity Prayer can help there, and identifying what you have in your sphere of control and what you have outside of your sphere of control, and learning to separate the two and let go. I think that Stoicism is very helpful. Non-attachment in Zen Buddhism, very helpful. Peace is Every Step, I think it is, by Thich Nhat Hanh, is very helpful as well. Vincenzo, here it is. Tim has talked about being the sum of the 5 people influences that you are surrounded by. Specifically, the way I would word that is you are the average of the 5 people you associate with most, which was the best advice I got when I was around 12 or 13. Right. So back to Vincenzo. I'd assume that these people could change over time. So from his current 5, is there one that has always been a constant, and why? No, there isn't one who's been a constant, although the people that I've had for the last, say, 10 years are pretty consistent. And it's a lot of my close friends, Matt Mullenweg, Kevin Rose, and then newer additions would be people like Jocko Willink. These are people who I don't necessarily want to, in each case, emulate in every way, but they have certain characteristics, qualities, values, strong suits that I really want to embrace and experience more of and cultivate more of in my own life. So there are many examples. Maria Popova would be another. So it's an evolving list, but there tend to be some constants if you look at the last, say, 10 to 15 years of my life. On the flip side, have you been that constant to someone else, and how important has it been to you? I haven't thought about that, honestly. I hope I'm a positive influence for the people I love and care about most. I think I've aspired to that, certainly, but I don't know. You'd have to ask them. And I should note that it's entirely possible, if you don't have access to maybe 5 people who are helping you average up in person, you can do this remotely. I mean, it's entirely possible to gain a lot from, say, having the right person in your ear. So hopefully I've done that for some people listening to the podcast. I listen to podcasts for that reason, certainly. I mean, when I love hanging out with Sam Harris, I think he helps me to average up. But when I'm not able to hang out with him, I can listen to his podcast. He's a very thoughtful guy. I can listen to Jocko. I can listen to Kevin Kelly. I can listen to many folks out there who are regularly having extremely interesting conversations or presentations, like Dan Carlin of Hardcore History. Okay, multiple questions about decision making. How do I deal with indecisiveness? Okay, and then it goes on, but I'm going to answer that first part. And I think this is also from Vincenzo. It might be from someone else, but there's no name listed. So indecision, I would encourage you to look at fear setting, the exercise in the 4-Hour Workweek, but also in Tools of Titans. There's a revised and expanded chapter on the exercise of fear setting, which I would argue is probably the most important exercise you can do, even more important than goal setting in a lot of respects, because you need to lift off the emergency brake, which is what fear setting does if you want to pursue any of your goals. Okay, so That being said, one of the questions involved in a good fear-setting exercise is not just analyzing the risks of the action you're considering or the decision, whether that's ending a relationship, starting a business, it could be anything, taking a long trip, taking a 3-month vacation from the business that you started that you don't believe can work without you, whatever it is. So you're not just looking at the potential risks or costs of action. You have to look at the risks and costs and definite penalties of inaction. So what does it cost you not to make a decision? What does it cost you already? What does it cost you not to start your own company? And what is that pain? What is that cost going to look like 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 18 months from now? These are things that help to spur action. Back to Vincenzo or whoever asked this. In the episode with Derek Sivers, he talks about using the criteria of hell yeah or no, but how do you decide amongst a bunch of hell yeahs? All right, well, I think maybe your bar is too low for hell yeah. Hell yeah should be, hell yeah, oh my God, this potential project or decision is so exciting to me that it keeps me up at night, that I wake up and it's the first thing I think about when I'm brushing my teeth. If you have too many of those, then I think your bar is too low, and maybe you need to amp up your aspirations. Just like anyone who uses awesome for everything or that's amazing for everything, they need to dial it back and apply those types of powerful labels only to things that are truly powerful. Okay, last part. Additionally, what is your process for quitting projects, relationships, etc.? Well, one of the benefits to how I approach things is the framing, and that is I don't think about taking on a project forever. I don't think about going into most relationships forever. I view it as a 2-week experiment if it's something brand new, a 6-month project, maybe if it's more involved and I want to commit some resources, time, energy, emotion, vulnerability to it. But I'm constantly reassessing, and I decide up front that, okay, this is 2 weeks. At the end of 2 weeks, if I'm completely dissatisfied or unhappy with this, I'm already giving myself permission to move on to another experiment and to stop this one. And it's not a failure, it's an experiment. The failure is feedback, so to speak. And approaching it that way, it's not like I have my identity vested in this decision I made that I thought was going to be permanent. That's not it at all. So by thinking of my life in terms of experiments and 6-month projects, not a 5 or 10-year plan, which I don't do, that I've pre-committed to and that becomes calcified and actually a prison of my own making, that is one way I think that I have developed the ability to quit very easily, because I don't view it as quitting. I view it as the start of a different experiment. And I would encourage you to check out Scott Adams as well, the creator of Dilbert. He talks a lot about systems thinking versus goals. That helps a lot, and that we talk about extensively in Tools of Titans because it comes up as a pattern with a lot of these different icons who are sharing their habits and tools and belief systems and so on. So that is it, guys. Those are the end of the questions, and thanks for listening. Hopefully that was useful, actionable, and I'll close with 2 things. Number 1, if you haven't checked out Tools of Titans, I would love you to check it out. Even if you just read the sample chapters, which you can find on toolsoftitans.com. People seem to be liking it. I loved writing it, which is a first for me. It's the first book I've enjoyed writing, and it's about, 88 or 90% 5-star reviews right now on Amazon, which is making me super, super happy. And last, I would say I'll close with a quote from Tools of Titans, which is from B.J. Miller, who's a palliative care physician. He's an MD who's helped more than 1,000 people die in hospice care. And he's learned a lot about how to live. And when I asked him what he would put on a billboard, a gigantic billboard to get a message out to millions of people, he said simply, do not believe, or I should say, don't believe everything that you think. We all have self-limiting beliefs up here, and journaling is one way to examine them. There are many ways, and don't let you be your worst enemy. It's really worth the time to regularly examine the assumptions and the beliefs that are perhaps not even yours. When you look at them, you've absorbed them from your parents, from your classmates, from your friends, from your teachers, from all these people, but you've never really stepped back, or stood back, I should say, and examined them critically. So don't believe everything that you think. Sometimes that voice in your head is not your best friend, and it's good to take a step back and try to figure out how you, like everybody else, all these icons we put on a pedestal, these are flawed creatures. They've just figured out how to find their one or two strengths and form habits around those, and you can do the same. All right, guys, happy holidays. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.